let's kind of talk about the environment of Node and really, I scratched the surface about some of the differences in the browser versus Node, but I really want to dig in a little deeper here and talk about some of the globals that we get access to, which are going to be super helpful for us when we're developing our apps inside of Node.js. So like the browser, Node.js does come with some practical globals for us in our applications. Not as many. Like if you go to the browser, you just like, anyone ever just did like window and then hit dot and just go through this list? That scroll bar is barely moving. There's a lot of stuff on the window. So they're not gonna have this much stuff on the global in Node, but yeah, there are some globals in there that we will be talking about. So some of the ones that I wanted to mention was literally this thing called global. So if I go to Node and I say console.log global, I mean, it's literally called global. And I execute this in the terminal, we get this strange looking object with some crazy stuff on it. This is just what the terminal, or this is what Node is representing it as when we log it. But at the end of the day, it's just an object with some familiar properties on them. You've probably heard of clear interval and clear timeout, set interval. Those are, those exist in the browser, and they work pretty much the same way here as well. Then you might see some other stuff like queue, microtask, and set immediate and things like that. And that has to do with kind of like how the event loop works in Node.js, which is something that we will talk about a little bit, but we won't really go into detail about the event loop because I don't think it's that important when you're learning Node.js. I do think it is important when you're trying to get the best out of Node.js though. And you can actually look at other courses we have in front of Masters where we talk about that. So yeah, you have something called global here that's got some really nice things. And then if we go back to our documentation website, there's this other thing called underscore dir name, and then the equivalent file name. And these two globals are very helpful because they give you the current directory name or the current file name that you're executing in. So what does that actually mean? Well, if I go back to my code here and I console.log dir name and file name, and I run these, you can see for the dir name, it's literally the path to the folder that I'm in. It's the directory name relative to the file that got executed. And then the file name is the file that you wrote that variable in. So this is very helpful because as you'll see in Node.js or any OS level based language, you're going to be interacting with files quite often, whether it's you're uploading an image, whether you're writing to a configuration file or reading a configuration file or environment variables. Like there's so many times you're interacting with files, especially if you're building a build tool like Webpack. You're literally only interacting with files. So getting these paths right is going to be crucial to you being able to develop those. So these two globals are extremely helpful. We have something called process, which I would probably argue is the most helpful thing inside of Node.js. And this is when you start to understand the power of Node.js compared to like a browser, which is also powerful in its own right, but you can see this how different they are. So if we go to our handy log over here and we check out the process object and we log this, I hope I'm not gonna, wait, do I wanna log this? I wonder if it's gonna show anything that I don't wanna show. I don't know, let's see. There's a lot of stuff on the process. Okay, so the process basically is, it's like the object where everything about the environment is stored. So you'll see like, what platform you're on, the version of Node, different internal things. One of the most important things that you'll see is going to be environment variables, which is somewhere on here. Oh, here we go. So that's what I didn't want to show, is those environment variables. So you're going to see like global environment variables that are exposed on your computer, which is super helpful when you're deploying like a server or something like that, because you don't want to have your secrets out in your GitHub repo and really tick someone off at your company. You want to put those somewhere in an environment and have them be injected in. And you do that, you access those environment variables through the process. So if you've ever like written some React thing somewhere and they had you put like process.env dot something, you didn't really know what that was, that's what this is. You're reading the process from the environment that the build tool that's processing your React is running in. So yeah, that was pretty meta. But yes, your build tools run in Node and they process your front end before the browser sees them. And because they are in Node, they have access to the process, which gives them access to the environment variables. And that's how you're able to embed different environment variables inside of a front end app before it gets deployed to a website. That's it. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff here on the process, and we'll be talking a little more about that later. And then you have these things with modules. And we're going to get to modules because right now modules are in a exciting phase in Node.js, and we're going to be using the latest version of the modules. But I do want to talk about the few here. So we have exports, we have module, and we have require. And these are globals that are going to be used for, I would say, the old module syntax inside of Node.js. And like I said, we're going to talk about it more, but it's nice to know what these are, and we're gonna dive in. But yeah, you're going to see these a lot in Node.js. They get injected into the environment for you. You don't have to worry about importing them or anything like that. They're just there, available, and they're used so you can create your own modules and expose them and share them and deploy them, publish them, whatever you want. So yes, we're going to check those out as well. And then, like I said, there's really just a lot of stuff in the global space that we didn't talk about. I put a link here to the documentation website that goes over all the stuff, because just like the browser, you don't need to know everything that's on the window, just like you don't need to know all of this stuff. You probably won't even use half of it, to be honest, especially if you're using like the new module syntax. You won't even use a lot of this stuff. And you most likely be using packages that you install, which we also are going to cover. So any questions on globals and global objects and variables inside of the Node.js runtime?